This is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch for Wednesday, December 11th. I'm Mark Martin. Today, cold, ice, and snow hitting much of America starting today. We'll hear why it's happening and get the forecast through Christmas. Why did gunmen open fire in Jersey City, New Jersey yesterday? We're going to hear what authorities believe may have been the reason in a deadly gun battle with police that lasted for hours. A major triumph for President Trump and congressional Democrats as the two sides actually come together to work out a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. And Christmas in Israel. We'll bring you a look at the holiday season in the Holy Land as thousands of people from around the world travel there for Christmas. Those stories and more today on Newswatch. We begin with the bitter cold expected across half the nation starting today, bringing snow and a swath of ice covering 1,000 miles. It could bring hazards from Tennessee to Maine. Charlene Aaron has the story.
A powerful blast of snow, ice, and bitter cold is blanketing half the nation. Here in Virginia Beach, temperatures dropped 20 degrees overnight. Winter weather advisories are in effect for over 20 million people. In Alabama, Mississippi, and Ohio, temperatures dropped quickly as snow began to cover the area Tuesday into Wednesday. In the Midwest, the National Weather Service says the cold front is bringing an Arctic air mass from the mid-Atlantic through the Northeast. Chill advisories have already been issued for a portion of the Dakotas, where forecasters expect wind chills as low as 40 degrees below zero. Minnesota under a winter storm warning, where a cold clock is showing -2 degrees. The National Weather Service said the dangerously cold wind chills could cause frostbite on exposed skin in as little as 10 minutes. Below average and bitter cold also in places like Buffalo, Philadelphia, and even Virginia Beach. The wintry weather making for a messy commute with icy roads causing issues for some.
The toughest part is the sheet of ice out there, so you're trying to get traction while you're pushing it up the hill. It's almost like that first snow of the year in Nebraska, and everybody's struggling with it. Could probably use a little bit of salt.
Over a foot of snow is possible in some areas of the region and in the northern Great Lakes. Forecasters say the winter storms could continue through Christmas, significantly impacting everything from holiday travel to shipping for those last-minute gifts. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Be careful out there. Well, with us now is Weather Bell meteorologist Joe Bastardi. He's also the author of the book, The Climate Chronicles, Inconvenient Revelations You Won't Hear from Al Gore and Others. Joe, welcome back to Newswatch.
Well, it's always good to be able to talk to you, Mark, even though most of the time I talk to you, some lurking disaster is occurring over here. Hey, listen, folks, the only thing I can tell you is at Weather Bell, we jumped back in the summertime on what's going on in the Northeast Pacific and the Central Pacific, and that there was a tremendous amount of potential for this winter. And you think this week's wild, at least what's going on now is moving quickly off and will be replaced in the eastern part of the United States, believe it or not, by a little bit of a milder spell over the weekend. But what is brewing down the road has a lot of potential next couple of weeks. And as a matter of fact, what I do for a living is not come on TV. This is a face for radio. What I do for a living is give big box companies, retail companies, salt companies, energy companies, anybody, and up on what's going on with the weather down the road, 3, 4, 5, 6 months away. And we've been saying, look, this is going to be a wild-looking winter. Wait till next week. You think 20 million people under watches and warnings now. We're going to have a major storm pull out of the southern plains, head up toward the Ohio Valley and the mid-Atlantic states, and really dump a lot of ice and snow. It reminds me a little bit of the winter right now of 77, 78. December 77 was quite erratic with a lot of back and forth with cold and warm and a lot of storminess. And then January, February, March, of course, were really very, very cold. I don't know if we're going to get to those levels, but there's certainly that potential on the table. We've identified a certain type of situation, Mark, going on in the Pacific. Actually, we look at all the data that comes in, and what I do is I read what everybody says and combines it with past knowledge, because I'm a little bit older than a lot of the meteorologists out there now. That's not to say anything bad about them. But what happens is, if you look at the type of El Nino that is being classified by the Japanese research branch on the El Nino, it's called a Modoki El Nino. 2002, 2003 was like that. 2009, 2010. You can remember what those winters turned out to be. And what happens is you'll see different meteorological agencies, like, for instance, the U.S. doesn't believe in El Niños going on because they use a different classification. So what we do is say, okay, let's go look at what happened before and actually try to line it up to what's going on now. So there is a lot of potential in this. And next week is going to be a pretty wild week, and it may continue right through Christmas. You folks in the Northern Plains, of course, I mean, you know, if you go back and look at what happened in the 70s, this is nothing, believe me, up there. So there's going to be a lot of cold up there, and the potential is it could get to those levels, but potential and reality sometimes are two different things.
Well, Joe, let's talk more about Christmas. Coming up in 2 weeks from today, what is your forecast through the Christmas season and then into Christmas? I mean, are a lot of folks going to see a white Christmas, do you think?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of snow before Christmas, but the problem is you could get it wiped out, you know, because you're going to have plenty of warmth sitting over the south that's going to try to come north. You get a storm. There's nothing more heartbreaking to me. You know, I'm one of these guys. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and only one out of every 6 years is a white Christmas. To have it snow on the ground, they get just wiped out 52 degrees in a rainstorm on Christmas Day or something like that. But you're going to see a widespread storm next week put down a lot of snow from Kansas and Colorado all the way into New England. And then it's a question of how much cold air can hang around and what the next bunch of storms do. Because what we believe is going to happen here is you're going to see the jet stream cut into California, start coming underneath, and then you're going to have to see how much cold air is left around. It's not like, okay, remember last year, 2018, it's just mild all over the place. I mean, there was a little bit of light snow Christmas Eve up in New England, but the entire country was warmer than normal. It is a much more active weather pattern this year, and much more conducive to coming to Weather Bell and letting us know it's going to be on. The unfortunate thing for you guys is that if it's as wild as I think it's going to be, you're going to have to see this face again pretty soon.
Oh, come on. You're too hard on yourself, Joe. Well, thanks again, meteorologist Joe Bastardi of Weather Bell. Thanks for being with us and sharing your information.
All right. Merry Christmas, brother. Bye-bye.
You too, sir. Bye-bye. Coming up, what led to that deadly gun battle in Jersey City, New Jersey Tuesday? It left 6 people dead. We're going to hear what the gunman's motive may have been when we come back.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
Authorities believe the two gunmen who launched a deadly attack in Jersey City, New Jersey Tuesday targeted a Jewish grocery, according to the city's mayor. 6 people, including a police officer, 3 bystanders, and 2 gunmen were killed in the furious gun battle that filled the streets with the sound of heavy fire for hours. The bullets started flying early in the afternoon in the city of about 270,000 people. The battle began at a cemetery where Detective Joseph Seals was shot and killed. Then gunmen drove a stolen van to another part of the city by the grocery store where they fought a gun battle for hours before police killed them.
There it goes. There it goes again. As soon as I got back up, all you heard was another hail of gunfire.
The kosher grocery is a central fixture in a growing community of Orthodox Jews who have been moving to Jersey City in recent years. Authorities don't believe this was terrorism, but the attack is still being investigated. Detective Seals leaves behind a wife and 5 children. In Israel, the parliament began voting to dissolve itself today and pave the way for an unprecedented third election within a year. The move comes after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and Benny Gantz's opposition Blue and White party failed to form a new government after the last election. Both have insisted they wanted to avoid another costly election campaign that's expected to lead to similar results, but a breakthrough which needed to happen by midnight tonight, Israel time, appeared extremely unlikely. House Democrats and the White House announced a major deal Tuesday on a modified North American trade agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, giving President Trump a major win on Capitol Hill. On the same day, congressional Democrats announced their impeachment charges against him. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy brings us that story from Washington.
This is not only a win for lawmakers, but also for President Trump. The commander-in-chief calls this the largest trade deal ever made.
This is a day we've all been working to.
Amid the impeachment drama, House Democrats struck a deal on trade with the White House.
Every once in a great while, you get to participate in a it-will-never-happen moment.
We were in range for a while, but until we could cross a certain threshold of enforcement, for our workers' rights, for environment, and for the prescription drug issue.
This move comes after President Trump criticized Pelosi and her team as do-nothing Democrats. But today he tweeted, Americans' great USMCA trade bill is looking good.
This is a very big deal. It's the biggest border in the world economically, believe it or not. Our southern border and our Canadian border does a lot of business.
We came a long way from what he originally proposed. And there are some people who said, why make it look like he has a victory? Well, we're declaring victory for the American worker and what is in this agreement.
Since President Trump signed the USMCA last year, the White House has been trying to win over House Democrats to get the deal through Congress.
There is no question, of course, that this trade agreement is much better than NAFTA.
Even Republicans seem to give the New Deal the green light.
If we're going to be competing, we need to be stronger. We would get a better agreement with China if we had the USMCA done. We would be in a stronger position.
Now, U.S. Trade Rep Robert Lighthizer, White House advisor Jared Kushner, and Canada's Deputy Prime Minister are expected to be in Mexico City on Tuesday for a signing ceremony. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
And taking a quick look now at the race among Democrats to be their nominee to take on President Trump in next year's election, a new poll finds that even though former New York City mayor and multi-billionaire Michael Bloomberg is spending a lot of money on his campaign, it's not buying him much support from Democratic voters. Former Vice President Joe Biden still leads in 2 new polls among Democratic voters with 29% in a Quinnipiac poll, followed by Bernie Sanders with 17%, Elizabeth Warren with 15%, and Bloomberg in 5th place at just 5%. Bloomberg also had just 5% in a poll from Monmouth University. Still ahead, he's helped free more than 100 innocent people from prison, including many on death row. Now, Brian Stevenson's amazing story has been made into a movie coming out this Christmas. Our Ephraim Graham sat down with him, and we'll have that interview right after this. Stay with us.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN Newswatch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Yes, right on time.
From Superbook.
Pepper's Pizza Palace is donating pizza for everyone today. Wait. I have big plans today.
Trust in God even when times are tough. He has a plan for your life.
Hey, we're gonna be late for the grand opening.
My parents want me to help with this outreach thing, feeding the community. What am I supposed to do here? Superbook!
Join the Superbook Club and get Superbook The Birth of Moses, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25.
Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile River, and I have a 3-month-old brother.
The Birth of Moses. Yours for a gift of only $25.
What will you do the next time the soldiers come? I do not know, but I trust God has a plan for all of us.
Superbook Club members, free streaming for seasons 1, 2, and 3 is now available.
Welcome back to Newswatch. Bryan Stevenson is a humble hero. The Harvard-trained attorney has spent more than 30 years representing people who can't afford to pay what it takes to prove their innocence. He's helped to free more than 100 innocent people from prison, many of them on death row. Our Ephraim Graham sits down with Stevenson just as Hollywood prepares to share his story on the big screen this Christmas.
Take a drive through downtown Montgomery. It's Alabama's state capital, the county seat of Montgomery County, the heart of the African American civil rights movement, and home to the Equal Justice Initiative, the nonprofit organization attorney Bryan Stevenson started many years ago to give legal representation to poor prisoners wrongly convicted of crime. Stevenson's humble hero story.
The first time I visited death row, I wasn't expecting to meet somebody the same age as me. From a neighborhood just like ours. Could have been me, Mama.
But what you're doing is gonna make a lot of people upset.
Is now a major motion picture starring Michael B. Jordan.
Your life is still meaningful, and I'm gonna do everything possible to keep them from taking it. You don't know what you're into down here in Alabama when you're guilty from the moment you're born.
God.
Mr. McMillan.
We done here.
The book as well as the film called Just Mercy. I can't think of mercy or grace without thinking of God. How would you describe your work in terms of how it relates to being a work of God?
Yeah, I think it's very shaped by that. I mean, I am a person of faith. I have always had to believe things I haven't seen and have chosen to live by grace. And so for me, it's consistent with the work I've been trying to do. I was drawn to helping people who were accused and incarcerated and condemned because I believe that we are all more than the worst thing we've ever done. I believe in redemption. I believe in restoration. And so that means, you have to fight for people who are often disfavored and excluded and marginalized. And I grew up disfavored and excluded and marginalized. I grew up in a poor community at the end of the Jim Crow era where black kids couldn't even go to the public schools. I started my education in a colored school. So I know what it's like to be judged, to be rejected, to be disfavored. And I think in the African American community that has created a kind of special relationship to grace and mercy because we've relied on that to get past the bigotry and hate. And I've certainly wanted to use that in my work defending the poor and the accused and the condemned.
Walter Johnny D. McMillan is among Stevenson's first cases. An Alabama man wrongly convicted of murder and sentenced to death.
You the lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for driving all the way out here. Most lawyers barely make time to call.
His is also the story shared in the film.
We all need grace.
How did Walter McMillian's story and that case change you? That was very early in your career.
Yeah. Well, one of the things it did for me is it made me appreciate how when we falsely accuse someone and convict them and condemn them, we don't just do it to them, we do it to whole families, whole communities. It was a community injury. Older people of color would come up to me and they'd say, Mr. Stevenson, it would have been so much better if he'd been out in the woods hunting by himself when the crime took place, because at least then we could entertain the possibility that he might be guilty. But because we were with him and we know he's innocent, it feels like we've been convicted too. It feels like we've been condemned too. And I don't think I had appreciated how devastating it is to a whole community to see someone you know is innocent wrongly convicted.
In terms of truth-telling, your book, as well as now a movie, I feel, does that. When did you know that your life's work and your work was a story to be told?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't think about it through that lens until just before I wrote the book. I mean, I knew I was doing the work. There were often times when I would say to myself, man, I wish there had been a video camera here to see that. That was just so crazy, or I wish somebody had. But I didn't really think about it through that lens. I think about 12 years ago, I began to fear that we might not be able to win Brown versus Board of Education, the case that desegregated schools in America. I began to fear that we might not be able to win that today because our courts are reluctant to do anything that disruptive for disfavored people. And that motivated me to get outside of the courtroom and begin thinking about how we engage a wider audience in this work of justice. That's when we put a sign on the building. That's when I did this TED Talk and I decided to write the book.
50 to 60% of all young men of color in jail or prison or on probation and parole.
And the movie is really sort of the next step in that. You know, I know that people will go watch movies that might not read books, and I'm hoping that the people who see this movie will be engaged, will be motivated, you know, to kind of join with us in this effort at creating healthier communities, healthier states, healthier nations by being more committed and focused on justice.
You've been at this now for more than 30 years. What sacrifice do you think, or what would you look back on your life and say is the greatest sacrifice you've had to make to do this?
You know, it's interesting. I don't really think of anything I've done as being a sacrifice. It's been hard. It's been challenging. You know, there are things, you know, that people looking from the outside might say I don't have, but I feel really privileged to do what I do. I feel like it's been a real gift to fight for people, to stand next to people, to affirm their humanity, to kind of give voice to their dignity. For me, that's been a great privilege. And I wish it weren't as hard and at times overwhelming, but I actually feel really blessed, really privileged to do what I do, and I don't have any regrets.
Just Mercy hits theaters this Christmas, and stay tuned to Studio 5 for interviews with cast member Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. And tonight, Efrem Graham sits down with the star of the new Clint Eastwood film, Richard Jewell. Actor Paul Walter Hauser shares the role Faith plays in his personal life and the life of Richard Jewell. That's tonight on Studio 5 at 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, an estimated 165,000 people will be taking an international Christmas trip this year to the Holy Land. We'll tell you how Israel is preparing to welcome them when we come back.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Efrem Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30. Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
For many Christians, the place to be for Christmas is Bethlehem and the Holy Land. This year, Israel is expecting an influx of Christians from all over the world. Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
Israel is prepared to welcome around 165,000 visitors to the Holy Land this Christmas season. Christmas is already in full swing in Bethlehem. Hundreds of people recently packed the birthplace of Jesus for the annual Christmas tree lighting celebration. The event took place in front of the Church of the Nativity, the spot many Christians believe is the place where Jesus was born. On Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, Christian pilgrims will get the chance to travel to Bethlehem from Jerusalem using a free shuttle service offered by the Israeli Tourism Ministry. The Tourism Ministry will also help Christians celebrate the miracle of Christ's birth by hosting its annual pre-Christmas reception for Israeli Christians and church leaders. Ambassadors, leaders of Christian organizations in Israel, and other dignitaries are expected to attend the celebration. The Tourism Ministry says 55% of all tourists who visited Israel in 2019 were Christian. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Looks like a wonderful place to be. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.